Welcome to our devotions using our Jesse tree during this season of Advent. This is day 10 in Advent. We've been spending a little bit of time talking about the stories in the Old Testament, God's work with God's people leading up to the birth of Jesus. The last couple of weeks we've been in the book of Exodus couple of days, not weeks, days, talking about Moses. And now we're going to continue with that story. Moses was floated in a river, a Hebrew baby that survived Pharaoh's decree to kill all the Hebrew baby boys. And then he was raised by Pharaoh's daughter in the palace as the adopted son, and he saw some Egyptian, slave masters, foremen, abusing a Hebrew worker, a Hebrew slave. So Moses killed him and hid his body, but some people saw him, so then he fled to Midian, where he's working as a shepherd in his father-in-law's herd, when God calls him out of a flaming bush that isn't consumed and says, you need to go back to Egypt and save the people. So Moses and his brother Aaron take on this task of trying to convince Pharaoh to let God's people go. And they try that with a variety of tactics, which include some horrible plagues. And there's 10 of them, like turning the Nile River to blood, and there's gnats, and there's flies, and there's darkness, and there's pestilence and disease. None of which quite seem to convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. So we're going to pick this story up in the 11th chapter of Exodus for a little bit. I'm reading out of the Message version of the Bible. God said to Moses, I'm going to hit Pharaoh and Egypt one final time, and then he'll let you go. When he releases you, that will be the end of Egypt for you. He won't be able to get rid of you fast enough. So here's what you do. Tell the people to ask each man from his neighbor and each woman from her neighbor for things made of silver and gold. God saw to it that the Egyptians liked the people. Also, Moses was greatly admired by the Egyptians, a respected public figure among both Pharaoh's servants and the people at large. Then Moses confronted Pharaoh. This is God's message. At midnight, I will go through Egypt, and every firstborn child in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl working at her hand mill, also the firstborn of the animals. Widespread wailing will erupt all over the country, lament such as never been and never will be again. But against the Israelites, man, woman, or animal, there won't be so much as a dog's bark, so that you will know that God makes a clear distinction between Egypt and Israel. Then all these servants of yours will go to their knees, begging me to leave, you and all the people who follow you. And I will most certainly leave. Moses, seething with anger, left Pharaoh. God said to Moses, Pharaoh is not going to listen to you. He's not going to listen to a thing that you say, so that the signs of my presence and work are going to multiply in the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron had performed all these signs in Pharaoh's presence, but God turned Pharaoh more stubborn than ever. Yet again he refused to release the Israelites from his land. And then we hear about God getting the Israelites prepared, telling them to make a feast on a certain day, to eat in a certain way. They're going to eat this unblemished lamb, whether it's a sheep or a goat. They're going to eat unleavened bread. They're going to have bitter herbs, and they're going to eat it on a certain day, prepared in a certain way. And while they eat it, they're going to be dressed and ready to go. Like, not like sitting down, but like we're ready to head out and to leave. And God says, and this is going to be a Memorial Day. You're going to do this every year, forever and ever, to remember that I, the Lord your God, freed you from the slavery in the land of Egypt. And then we'll continue on. And he also tells them that they need to paint their lintels and their doorways with the blood of those lambs that they have slaughtered, so that God will know to pass over their houses that they are the Israelite people and not Egyptians. And now that 10th plague comes. At midnight, God struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sits on his throne, down to the firstborn of the prisoner locked up in jail, also the firstborn of the animals. Pharaoh got up that night, he and all his servants and everyone else in Egypt. What wild wailing and lament in Egypt. There wasn't a house in which someone wasn't dead. Pharaoh called in Moses and Aaron that very night and said, "Get out of here and be done with you, you and your Israelites. Go worship God on your own terms, and yes, take your sheep and cattle as you've insisted, but go and bless me." The Egyptians couldn't wait to get rid of them. They pushed them to hurry them up, saying, "We're all as good as dead." The people grabbed their bread dough before it was risen, bundled their bread bowls in their cloaks, and threw them over their shoulders. The Israelites had already done what God had told them to do. The Israelites moved on from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot, besides their dependents. There was also a crowd of riffraff tagging along, not to mention the large flocks and herds of livestock. They baked unraised cakes with the bread dough that they had brought out of Egypt. It hadn't raised. They'd been rushed out of Egypt and hadn't time to fix food for the journey. The Israelites had lived in Egypt 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, God's entire army left Egypt. God kept watch all night, watching over the Israelites as he brought them out of Egypt. Because God kept watch, all Israel for all generations will honor God by keeping watch this night, a watch night. And then, you know, as the story goes along, that all these people are on the move. All these people and all their livestock are on the move. And Pharaoh changes his mind and decides he's not going to let the Israelites go. So he sends his army after him. And Moses, at God's command, uses his rod to strike the water and split the sea open so that the Israelites can pass safely to the other side. And the water closes up and the Egyptians cannot come after them. And then they are on a journey. They are on a journey in the wilderness. But for this day, we recall the Passover. And, you can see it a little bit. So this is my doorpost, and it has the blood of the lamb painted on the doorpost, so that God will know that these are God's people. And that is our devotion for today. So we'll get our ornament up on the tree. Someday I'll figure out how to do this so you can watch. Have a good day.